your host, Tiffany, and I'm here to tell all the crazy teacher stories that might make you seem like you're a bad teacher, but you're not. And I'm just here to share them with people who don't work in education to remind them that this is real life for us. And today I've got my friend Ryan. Ryan, remind us what you do again.
So I'm IT. I work up on the Air Force Base.
No children there.
Right.
I forgot to ask you last time. Have you ever worked in like a childcare or babysitting setting?
No, I
No.
never have.
No.
No.
Babysat? I know you have nieces and nephews, right?
Yeah, I've had nieces and nephews for a long time because my eldest sister is like 10 years older than me. So I was pretty young when I became like an uncle,
Yeah,
and then started kind of babysitting them. But
that's about it.
yeah,
Oh, have you had anything thrown at you by a child?
not that I can remember. No.
Well, consider yourself lucky if you've had nothing thrown at you. And that's not just my own kids. I've had everyone's kids throw stuff at me. Today, I want to talk about. So, somebody asked me a question the other day, and he said, "Do you think that kids that have behavior problems are kids that are you see it more from kids that have two parent homes, one parent homes, or being raised by grandparents?" Do you have a thought on that before I continue with what I said?
I mean, my first thought on it would be that it shouldn't really matter as long as the whichever parent, whatever situation, as far as parents go, that is in that home, as long as they're taking care of the kids and doing what they need to do.
For sure. And so I sat and thought about it, and I said my answer was no. I I don't have like a specific like, oh, if they're coming from grandparents, then I know they're gonna have behavior issues. At least from my experience, my answer was that if kids have trauma, then that's how I can tell they're going. If they have a lot of trauma with them, I automatically assume or kind of prepare myself for something. And it just so happens to like sometimes correlate. Like kids that are being raised by grandparents, they might have trauma from their parents.
Right.
And so that's why they're being raised by grandparents.
For whichever situation got them to be in the grandparents' home.
Right.
Right.
And so, and this is my first year of teaching. I thought I was the best teacher ever. Like it was smooth sailing. And a co-teacher told me like, this isn't normal. Just wait till next year. I want to tell you about my second year of teaching. The kid that made me realize, so I heard all those stories of like kids throwing things and crazy behavior kids. And I was like, not in my classroom because I'm a good teacher. No. The kid that changed it for me. I will never forget this kid. The things that I cried many days from just this one kid. Now I look back and laugh and I'm like, this kid was my favorite. But just some of the stories from this one kid. And I don't want to say his real name, so we're just going to call him Joe. The things Joe did to make me realize that teachers deal with a lot and everyone has a student that is going to push your buttons and make you feel like you're a bad teacher, but you're not a bad teacher. You're doing great. And the kids come with a lot of trauma and baggage, and this kid had a lot of trauma and baggage. He was being raised by grandparents. His mom was in and out of jail. His dad was in prison. He wasn't going to see dad again, but mom would pop in and out of his life. And you could tell the moments when mom would come back into his life versus not. So my second year of teaching, first day of school within an hour. First of all, first day of school is only 4 hours. It was a half day.
Oh, wow.
This kid, I asked the kids to do something, and this 8-year-old walks up, just looks straight at me, and spits on my board, and then goes and sits back.
What? Just goes to the front of the class and just spits on the board.
Just spits on the board.
That's crazy.
What do you do?
Right.
I was like, I didn't do anything. I just let him do it. I was like, okay, this is weird. All right.
Well, and especially after, like you said, you have your first year and everything's going great, and you're like, I got this, I nailed this.
Yeah.
And
it was a
that's
honeymoon period.
That was your first experience of the second. That's crazy.
And then later on that day, I had all my kids move to the carpet, and he's just like, no, I'm not doing that. And then he just sat at his desk throwing things at me while I was at the carpet with the other kids. Like, all right, cool. This is how this is going. And then he ended the day with a fist fight with another kid in my class because the kid looked at him funny, and they just got into it.
Wow.
I cried immediately after.
And that was all the first day.
That was first day. That was day 1.
4-hour first day.
Of my half day, first day, second year of teaching. And I came home, and what do you think Eric told me? My husband. What do you think he told me?
Oh, whatever, it'll get better.
No, he's like, you should just quit.
Oh, yeah.
And so it just made me more mad. I was like, well, I'm not going to quit just because you said I could quit. I'm like, now I have to go back.
Right.
My favorite story, this kid, his grandma called me one morning and was like, hey, can you check his desk and his backpack and see if he stole my necklace? It's a gold necklace. And I was like, okay, sure. So I put her on hold, check in, everything. I was like, no, I don't see it. She's like, all right. So I assumed that was the end of that conversation. Yeah. 10 minutes later, she is in my classroom, barging through the door. And she's like, I'm sorry, Mrs. My name was Stringwell, but we've got to stop for a second. I was like, all right, like, what? So what's okay? And she says, she pulls up Joe and she's like, empty your pockets. He looks at her and he's like, all right. Empties his pockets. Nothing. She dumps his desk on the floor in front of everyone, just full on. Like, I don't know about you, but as a kid, if my mom would have come in and dumped my desk, I'd be so embarrassed.
Mortified.
Right?
For sure.
This kid, he didn't care. So she dumps his desk and he's like, I told you. And she's like, empty your back pockets. And he's like, all right, nothing. She's like, take off your shoes. And I was like, oh, snap. Oh, so he empties his shoes and he looks at her, throws them, and he's like, nothing. And then she says, take off your socks. Sure enough, it was in his sock.
What?
I was like, this kid, I would have never thought to hide something in my sock. Clearly, I'm not street smart. This is also the year that I learned, like, street smarts.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because the mom comes in and she just starts going down the list of, like, take this off, do this, let's check this next. Like, she's done this before. This isn't the first time that she's, like, had to search him for something.
And he's 8. And he knew that this necklace was valuable, too. I don't know what he planned on doing with it, but he had her gold necklace. And it was in his sock. My mind was blown. I was like, all right. And then I just assumed that he wouldn't do anything like that again because grandma had already come in and just, like, dumped everything out and was, no. I mean, he stole many things. He stole a cell phone. And I could not, for the life of me, I knew it was him. Kids were telling me it was him, but I couldn't figure out how. Like, I had searched his backpack. Yeah. I had done the same thing Grandma did. Even I was like, in your sock?
He's like, no, I learned from that. I have a better spot.
Yeah. And then one day I'm sitting there after school and I hear a buzzing. Like, what in the world? And I can hear the buzzing and it's not my phone. So I call in another teacher. I'm like, help me find this buzzing.
Yeah.
He had taken it and he had a folder and we had book boxes along the back and he had taken it and put this phone inside of the folder pocket, mushed tons of paper in it. So it just looked like his folder had a ton of paper in it, and then put it in the book box and it was at the back shelf. So I never thought to check back. I don't know. I was second year teaching. Clearly I wasn't street smart enough to know.
Why would you though?
To know where kids hide things when they steal.
Yeah.
Never stolen. And it took us 30 minutes to figure out, and we finally found it, and that's where it was. He had stolen some other kid's cell phone. Also, I don't know how or when throughout the day he managed to take a cell phone.
Right.
Kids are sneaky.
Yeah. Because all the time that he's in that classroom, either you're going to be in there or somebody else is going to be in there, right?
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know how. But yeah, this kid gave me a run for my money all year long. And I will never forget picture day. Picture day is chaos. Like, the kids are all hyped up, dressed to their best, like picture day. And my teacher next door, she had a crazy class too. And so the way our classrooms are set up, they're next to each other, and we had a conjoining closet. And so our rooms, we could just, intertwine with each other. Our kids shared a coat closet, and the doors were connected.
Like inside the rooms, there was like a connecting door?
Yeah.
Okay.
So her class, picture day, it was the end of the day, and my class, like, I'm trying to contain my class, and her class, I just hear the principal and another teacher in there helping in her room, and one kid is in the closet crying his eyes out because the picture, the photographer had called him a pickle. And so, have you ever seen, like, I don't know why school photographers, they do this, like, they're like, smile, like they try and get the kids to laugh. And so
Okay,
they
like,
call them random names,
yeah,
like, hey, Barbie.
right.
Hey, and they called this kid a pickle. And this kid lost it.
Doesn't like pickles.
All day long. He's like, I'm not a pickle. So the teacher finally just let him like hang out in our coat closet. And you could just hear him all day like screaming for an hour, like, I'm not a pickle. Why would he call me a pickle? I'm like, oh man, her class. And then I could hear like another kid in her room was throwing chairs against the whiteboard, which her whiteboard was connected to mine. So he's banging on that. And my class, like I have Joe, who was just, I'm in the middle of teaching math, and every 5 minutes he just kept yelling out, bitch,
What?
bitch.
Oh my gosh. He's 8.
And a terrible method that we were kind of like taught, like, we ignore distractions. Just
Right.
let the other kids know that we ignore distractions. And now, like, thinking about it too, I'm like, it's my second year. I should have called someone and like, get this kid out of my room.
Yeah.
But I had no help, and nobody would have come and got that kid out of my room either way. So it was just, I had to sit there, try and teach 25 other kids. I mean, yeah, I had a class of 28 that year. So 27 other kids. And this kid, who I can't do anything about, and it's, if I call and ask for help, they're going to say, just ignore him. Just ignore him.
Yeah.
And every 5 minutes, he's just yelling, bitch, bitch.
Oh my gosh.
Like, what would you do in your office if every 5 minutes somebody was yelling that at you?
Like, something has to happen, right? Like, you have to take him out of the room. You have to, like, one-on-one, like, in a school, like, send him to like, the counselor's office or something like that.
Yeah. So I finally, like, I get him to stop saying that. And I have my class, like, calm down. Kid in the closet is yelling, crying over being called a pickle. And then the principal and one of our sped teachers has to full on carry a kid from my class, the class next door, full on carrying a kid through my classroom, like trying to restrain him because he was losing it so bad. Like they're carrying a kid through my classroom. And this kid, Joe, is holding up a whiteboard that says, you're a bitch. I'm trying to teach math. I've got one kid crying about being a pickle. And then the principal is physically carrying a kid through my room screaming. And then my class obviously loses it. And then this kid is sitting there following me around with a whiteboard that says, you're a bitch.
Oh my gosh. It's amazing.
Many days they came home and cried.
Oh, I bet.
Because, again, what do you do?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, like they're, young. Like you said, he's 8. So it's like, there's not a lot that you can do.
And this kid too, like he again, like I look back and laugh at it now because he came with a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And like I was always so forgiving because like he's acting out for reasons, and I get it why you're acting out for these reasons. And but at the same time, I'm like, there was zero accountability held for kids. No strike, like in the school system. Like, what would if I went to somebody and said, "Hey, I need help with this kid," I'm looked at as like a bad teacher. Like,
Yeah.
I can't handle this kid. And then it's like, oh, if I went and asked for help, not only am I a bad teacher, but they're gonna tell me, "Oh, well, have you tried, just ignoring him?" I did that for half a year, was just ignoring him.
Yeah.
Have you tried? One of the things I was told to me is like, have you tried a sticker chart? I'm like, this kid who stole a gold necklace and is calling me a bitch on a daily basis, he doesn't care about a sticker.
Right. Like, that's just not going to work in some situations.
He doesn't care that he gets a sticker for sitting in his chair.
Yeah.
And the biggest, I dealt with it because I'm like I felt for the kid. I had to, do my job. Nobody was going to help me. And I know that a lot of people will comment back to like, this is the problem. Like, there is no help for these kids.
Yeah.
He wasn't in trauma counseling. Did he need it? Yes, he needed it. Was he getting extra, like, I tried to give him extra conversation, extra attention, but he knew he was smart. He knew what was happening with his parents. He knew why grandparents were raising him. He yeah, so the kids, we could say this all day long too. Teachers need more resources. Not teachers need more resources. Kids need more resources. Like he needed a counselor.
Yeah, for sure.
And then it got brought up to me. This is a hard turning point too. So this kid, even though I loved him and like I could ignore him, it started to take a mental toll on like the other kids. So from just an outside perspective, if you have a kid that's acting out at like who are you going to sit him by in a classroom?
Usually the either, I mean, I guess I could see it both ways because if you have like a trouble corner or something, but normally you would put him next to the good kid, right?
The quiet kid,
Yeah, the good, like well behaved.
And that's what I did just because I was like, well, this kid will ignore this kid that's acting out, right?
Right.
Where I picture you being the quiet kid in school. Did you ever have to sit next to the naughty kid?
I was quiet until like high school, and then I got like some of my friends and stuff. We started kind of acting out,
Yeah.
and then yeah, it kind of changed a little bit. But yeah, I was like elementary, that kind of stuff. I was probably more one of the quiet kids. Yeah.
Yeah, same. I remember always having to sit next to the kid at like kid in school. Same with my sister, Britt. She was one time she would always have to she was so quiet. She always had to sit next to the kid that was the troublemaker. And one day this kid was acting out and he took her and this was 20, 30 years ago, again, years ago, and he took her head because she was raising her hand to tell the teacher what he was doing, and he slammed her head into the desk.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so, like, now being a teacher, I'm like, well, crap, now I'm doing it. I'm like,
Yeah.
my sister was always the one who had to sit next to a kid that would act out. And what happened to her? He ended up slamming her head into a desk.
Yeah.
And so now I'm like, crap, I'm the teacher that's doing that because it's just easy, you know. Or I would put him in a seat away by himself, and then I'm like, he's isolated. I felt bad either that way, too. What do you do? And I did have a parent call me and was like, she is having a hard time always having to sit by him because she knows that she will just ignore him.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and sometimes in that situation where you have like the quiet, well-behaved kids, if they always have the trouble, you know, the kids that are causing issues around them, then they start thinking that they're the problem. They start thinking that, you know, is there a reason why they're getting put next to me? And then they feel like they're falling behind and suffering because they can't concentrate or anything else.
Right. And I see this like huge shift in on social media of parents like talking about it too. Like, what about like we all feel bad for the kid that has trauma. We feel bad for the kid that is acting out because of his trauma or their trauma. But what about my kid who is going to school to learn and is losing valuable learning time because of the other kids? What do you do?
Right. Yeah, it's tough because like in that situation, it's like the ideal of what people would want is, well, then you take that kid out of the classroom and have them, you know, one-on-one or something like that. But there's not the support or the staff or teachers that can handle like no school is set up to be able to take those kids separately and to the side and kind of
no. And then it's like, is that okay too to have those kids that are causing all the problems just put them in a room together with one teacher?
Right.
What do you do? No, you're right. There's no money or resources to help get those kids what they need, and then it's just a vicious circle of, well, then these kids are suffering, well, this kid is suffering, and then you have to decide, well, whose kid, like which kid's suffering means more, or which one do I have to take more serious. And I remember that year I spent so much energy into this kid because I did feel bad for him. He wasn't getting resources that he needed. Sure, what did he throw? Oh, one time he took a pencil sharpener. This is why I don't allow pencil sharpeners in my classroom. And this is a PSA, just don't allow pencil sharpeners in your classroom, the little hand ones. This kid took it apart, and I was in the middle of teaching and took the razor blade piece out of it and threw it at me.
Oh my gosh.
And it got my arm, luckily, and a little nick, no big deal. But did he get suspended?
No.
Because teachers know. There's no supports. Like, admin doesn't take us seriously. We're like, we need help from this kid. Again, I'm being told, well, ignore distractions. Don't let him have a pencil sharpener. It's my second year of teaching. I know that now.
Right.
I didn't realize kids were going to take the pencil sharpeners apart and throw them at me.
Find weapons inside of it. It seems like it's more geared towards get to the end of the school day
Yes.
than it is like actually resolving anything, trying to improve the situation or anything. Like from the admin side, it seems more like just get through your school day.
Put
Get to
fire. They're
tomorrow.
just putting fires out.
Yeah.
When we're getting we're never getting to the root of we're putting band-aids on everything. So this kid throws a razor blade at me. This kid does this, calls me a bitch every day. This kid spits on my board, and the solution I ended up having to do a tracker where he would earn points every hour, and then if he got so many points at the end of the day, he got a prize. Did that help him in the long run? Probably not. What did he really need? To speak with a counselor or somebody on a day-to-day basis to help him get to the root of the problem. We're just putting band-aids on everything in schools. Yeah. And as much as I don't want to blame admin, I mean, it's not their fault too. Their hands are tied just as much. But yeah.
So, I mean, like ultimately it all comes down to, where they can put the money and everything else if they can't afford to have like a staff of counselors to deal with.
Right.
Because, like he's not the only kid in the school that was having issues. So it's like,
for sure,
from the administration side of it, they're looking at it and saying, well, we have a dozen of these kids that are having, specific needs issues that we just don't have the resources to address.
Exactly. And I felt like the younger the kids were, the more like they got pushed on the back burner because like, oh, these kids are older. It's a little more serious. These kids are younger. They're acting out. But in reality, kids are coming to school with so much trauma.
Yeah.
I mean, he's 8 and he's dealing with his dad in prison, his mom in and out of jail. He's being raised by grandparents where his mom occasionally shows up like, yeah, he's got to be going through a lot.
Yeah. Well, and like where their initial thing was just ignore it. So from his perspective, he's acting out. Yeah. He's not getting in trouble. He's not getting corrected. It's being ignored. So he's like, okay, I need to do something else to get more attention. Mm-hmm. I need to if he's like crying out for help in a way, he's like.
For so long, I was told teacher class, we ignore distractions and just ignore him. And then after that wasn't working. The next step was let's try a sticker chart. He can earn stickers. That didn't work. And then the next step was we're going to try a behavior tracker where he earns points and then he can get a prize at the end of the day. I mean, sure, every kid wants a prize at the end of the day, but then you have to ask, is this equitable for other kids too? What's happening with those kids that, you know, though having to sit next to him on a daily basis and parents coming to me going, well, this is taking up their valuable class time. If you're spending 20 minutes during math dealing with this, what's my kid doing during that 20 minutes? So I would spend extra time planning for scenarios where if we had to leave the classroom, we weren't just sitting in the hallway while principal is trying to wrangle this kid. I would have to spend extra time planning and prepping an emergency activity or an emergency lesson, so those kids weren't losing valuable time as well while he's destroying my classroom and we're in the hallway ignoring distractions.
Right.
So then it just became, again, now I have more to do on top of this when I feel like all of this could have, the root of the problem wasn't being solved, which was he needed help with his mental health.
Yeah, for sure.
And again, wrap this up. Moral of the story, mental health resources for children. They are screaming at us for it.
Yeah.
And don't have pencil sharpeners in your classroom.
Who knew?
Thoughts, stories, crazy stories. Give us an email, DM, TikTok, Instagram, all the things. Follow, share, subscribe. Did I hit it all?
I think so, yeah.
Until next time.